to the 6th episode of Dear Michelle Obama, the podcast, aka Dear Michelle. I am your host, Anonymous. In the last episode, titled Welfare, I talked about my daddy's misadventures. In this episode, titled Vanishing, I discussed the things that disappeared in my life. This episode does not contain the intro letter to Michelle Obama, but it does include the exit letter. A brief warning, this episode also contains references to sex, violence, and death. Here, take a listen. Obnoxious, hideous, rank, putrid, funky, stinky, nasty. I complain to my mother. She tells me to shut up. This is her default response to every question I will ever ask about anything for the next 12 years. But I don't shut up. The smell gets worse and worse and worse. It clings to me as tightly as I cling to the hope that someday my daddy, flawed and imperfect, will come back home. Finally, my mother complains to our landlord, Mr. C. Mr. C tells her it is a rat trapped inside the vent again. But it isn't a rat. It's our next door neighbor. He's died, and the smell is his decaying body. In the days before cameras get installed on doorbells, people use tiny pieces of glass called peepholes to see who knocks on the front door. Our neighbor's front door faces our front door. When the paramedics arrive, my mother steps outside our front door to take a look, and there he is, our dead neighbor, propped up in a chair in the middle of the living room. He isn't alone though. Bugs cover his entire body. His sister, his caretaker, frail and not exactly lucid, has continued to care for him even though he's been dead for weeks. My mother uses her body as a brace to keep me from peering out. It doesn't work. I too stand and watch in horror as the paramedics, with a mix of bewilderment and compassion, continue to care for our dead neighbor. Long after the paramedics leave and the neighborhood chatter quiets, his smell still lingers. It's as if our neighbor cannot bear to let go. And then one day, the smell vanishes. It no longer clings to walls or to my clothes or to me. It simply lets go and disappears. They are the last white family to live on our block. Their apartment is relet by a black single father. His daughter peers out at me behind sad and longing eyes. Each time I try to speak, her sad eyes drop to the ground. We speak the same language. I do not know the cause, but I understand that she is hurting. One day, my mother grabs and violently shakes me. She makes me swear not to ever speak to another living soul about the girl's father. And for the second time in my life, I see in my mother's eyes what I've only seen once before, the day my father stood over her with sewing shears. I see fear. In the months that follow, hundreds of people, mainly men, pound on the heavy wooden door to our apartment. My mother spends countless hours pleading with them to leave. These men lean and nod in the stairway leading to our apartment like zombies, their eyes red and bloodshot. I watch as they scratch at invisible scars. My mother makes repeated requests of our neighbor to stop. She tells him that what he does is dangerous and jeopardizes our lives. I don't know exactly what it is he does, but whatever it is, it frightens my mother and sends strange men to our front door. It also causes my mother to whisper about our neighbor to her brothers and sisters each week when we visit my grandmother. I try to silence my cousins so I can hear what the adults are saying, but I can only hear my mother speak to her brothers and sisters in broken sentences. She calls our neighbor Hair, Hair, Ron, and I wonder why the kids in his neighborhood nicknamed him Hair Ron. I assume that beneath his clothes, he must be really hairy, since there's nothing remarkable about the hair on his head. If you haven't already guessed, Heron isn't his name. Key and peeled Aaron, it is his profession. Our neighbor is a black Pablo Escobar wannabe, the hookup man, the connect. Our neighbor sells heroin. But he doesn't just give the men, the addicts, he conducts his illegal pharmaceutical sales transactions with his apartment number. He gives them ours. My mother thinks I don't see her plead with Heron to stop. She tells him that his scheme is dangerous and asks him repeatedly why he doesn't care about the children. And I get the impression she's not only asking about my brother and me, but the children of the men addicted to the powdery substance that litters our stairwell. One day, the police show up at my school. There are two officers, one white, the other black. They question me about Heron's extracurricular activities. Technically, I obey my mother. I verbally tell the cops that I don't know anything, but the cops already know. They see the look of fear in my eyes. The white cop, big and burly, pats me atop my head. He tells me that Heron will never be able to hurt my family again. I come home from school. My mother yanks open the door and snatches me inside. She asks if anyone came to my school to talk to me. I tell her no. She asks if I told the police what my neighbor does for a living. Again, I tell her no. She searches my face for the truth. It isn't there. It can't be. I've kept my parents' secrets for 7 years. This one belongs to me. She tells me Heron has been arrested. I stifle a smile before it occurs to me that his daughter will now know what it feels like not to have her daddy come home. I feel guilt, and then I don't. For a while, his clients continue to knock on our door, and then the zombie men vanish. I still see them walking the streets, red-eyed and scratching at invisible scars. For a while, things calm down. No dead bodies, no heroin dealer foot traffic. There's boredom and hunger and drudgery that comes from living welfare check to welfare check. There are also tears that rain down like waterfalls because I'm hurt and sad all the damn time. And there's all this emptiness in space that used to be filled with childhood that is now filled with lonely and crazy. Eventually, a single parent, a woman I nicknamed Mama Diva, moves into the apartment building next to ours. Her bedroom window faces my bedroom window. The only thing separating us is a driveway. Mama Diva has a boyfriend. Her boyfriend is extremely well endowed. I nickname him Elephant Trunk because, well, it's long and thick and has this weird curve at the end. I imagine that it curves that way because it just kept growing and eventually even gravity gave up on that thing, which permitted it to change course and turn upwards again. Like an elephant trunk. Anyway, Mama Diva and Elephant Trunk don't believe in privacy. They leave the lights on, the curtains up, and the windows open when they adult. He enters her, she screams, my mama curses. He thrusts, Mama Diva screams louder. My mama runs into my room to make sure I'm asleep. I'm not. Elephant Trunk thrusts harder and harder. Mama Diva screams and screams. My mother curses and curses. There are harder and harder thrusts and louder screams and more cursing, repeated over and over and over again. This is our ritual symphony of bullshit and crazy. Mama Diva has 2 sons. The older one and I have already made plans to get married. He promises not to stab me with sewing shears. I promise not to end up as crazy as my mama. We both plan to close the curtains when we adult. My future husband and his brother play in the driveway between our apartments, and he throws rocks up at my window. They play in the driveway and throw rocks to make me feel like I'm playing too, because my mama has turned my entire childhood into a lifeless, soulless prison camp. I'm not allowed to go outside and play with other children. I love to read, but she won't even let me do that most of the time. I'm forced to sit or lie in bed for hours and days and years alone. Anyway, Mama Diva gets a job as a bus driver. Everyone in our neighborhood cheers. Everyone except Elephant Trunk and my mama. My mama is happy Mama Diva is planning to leave. One less sister girl for my mama to side eye and hate on. Mama Diva has plans. She plans to buy a house close by, with a backyard big enough for her kids to play in. Future husband promises to visit and play in the driveway and throw rocks at the window. And we agree to meet during school recess as often as we can. We too have a plan. But Mama Diva's plan doesn't involve Elephant Trunk, so one day she asked him to leave. Elephant Trunk climbs up onto the 2nd floor balcony, breaks into her apartment, and shoots her twice in front of future husband and his brother. And then Elephant Trunk escapes the same way he came in. Mama Diva dies. She dies in front of future husband, her dreams forever silenced. A week or so later, future husband and his brother stand outside in navy blue peacoats. They have just returned from their mother's funeral. They are going down south to live with relatives. I don't exactly know where down south is, but it sounds like the kind of place where people go when you don't ever see them again. And I'm right. In a strange way, Elephant Trunk didn't just end Mama Diva's dreams. He ended one of mine too. And so our lives returned to the version of normal they were after my daddy left, but before Mama Diva and Elephant Trunk move in. I'm 7, And I've seen too much, I know too much, I've heard too much, I cry too much, I'm sad too much, I'm very angry and way too smart for my own good. I'm broken, torn, scattered, and shattered. And like everything else in my life, I too am starting to vanish. Dear Michelle, it isn't quite safe for you to come back. Not yet, anyway. Hello, and thank you for listening to this episode of Dear Michelle Obama, the podcast, aka Dear Michelle. If you like what you heard, email me at dearmichelle@yahoo.com or tweet me at dearmichelle4. Join me next time when I discuss all the things broken and crazy in an episode titled Broken and Crazy. In the interest of full disclosure, Broken and Crazy is one of my most favorite episodes. Until next time, bye-bye.